Hello, welcome back to Story House. In this episode, we delve into the willpower instinct, how self-control works, why it matters, and what you can do to get more of it. This book is written by Stanford University professor Kelly McGonigal. Before getting into the content of the book, let's first touch upon the phenomenal societal response it has garnered. Since its release in 2012, the book has topped global bestseller lists, and numerous online platforms are filled with discussions dedicated to it. Many groups have formed based on its principles of this book. It is also known as Stanford University's most popular psychology course. This immense popularity not only attests to the book's appeal, but also highlights society's desire to strengthen self-control. The underlying sentiment? Many feel they lack control in their lives, especially in a world brimming with temptations. So, how can one enhance their willpower? McGonigal provides answers in her book. She outlines various scientifically backed techniques to boost willpower, like 5-minute meditation sessions, delaying gratification by 10 minutes, or adding an hour to one's sleep. These methods are straightforward and show immediate results. However, the book isn't merely a collection of tips. It goes deeper. McGonigal dedicates much of the book to exploring why we often can't control ourselves. Is it a matter of attitude? Are there limits to willpower? Why does doing good sometimes lead us astray? Can willpower be contagious? Drawing from various disciplines, including biology, psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics, she analyzes these questions. Some of the findings are surprising. For instance, willpower is tied to the physiological activity in the brain's prefrontal cortex. Both impulsivity and self-control are inherent to human nature. Feelings of guilt and self-blame can lead to a might-as-well attitude and subsequent lapses. So in this book, the author not only wants to tell us what willpower is, but also explain the reasons behind it. Dr. Kelly McGonigal, the author, is a health psychologist and lecturer at Stanford University and a leading expert in this field. She has been honored with Stanford's highest teaching award. The content of the Willpower Instinct is drawn from her course on the Science of Willpower at Stanford. Let's delve deeper into the key contents of this book. Our journey begins with an understanding of the essence of willpower. We will first explore its intricacies, next venture into the factors that can weaken it, and then conclude with ways to strengthen it. To truly grasp willpower, it's vital to note that it isn't simply a subjective attitude. It's intertwined with our brain and body, playing a role much deeper than many of us realize. A poignant case study in the realm of psychology that showcases this relationship is that of Phineas Gage. Back in 1848, Gage experienced a life-changing accident. A metal rod pierced through his left cheek, traversing the front part of his brain before making an exit on the other side. By sheer luck, Gage survived. However, the aftermath of the accident saw a profound change in his behavior. The Gage, who was once composed and willful, had now become irritable, lacking patience, and overly impulsive. It was as if the internal brakes in his brain had malfunctioned, leading him to behave in a reckless manner. But what led to such a drastic transformation in Gage? The answer lies in the damage done to a specific section of his brain, the prefrontal cortex. Situated at the forefront of our brain, just behind our forehead, the prefrontal cortex is often called the CEO of the brain. It's the part that evaluates and usually suppresses impulses from other brain regions. When confronted with desires, such as the urge to rest, the temptation of food, or the distraction of news, it's the prefrontal cortex that steps in to evaluate them, juxtaposing them against our long-term goals. Gage's accident, which incapacitated his prefrontal cortex, explains his sudden impulsiveness. The author explained further the function of the prefrontal cortex, revealing its 3 distinct facets. The left side acts as a driving force, motivating us to confront challenges head-on. So, if you find running difficult, it's this part of the brain that pushes you to persevere. This facet is aptly termed as the I willpower, In contrast, the right side serves as a check, helping us rein in our impulses. Faced with a tempting dish, this region nudges us to refrain, giving rise to what the author calls the I won't power. Lastly, there's the central lower region, our internal compass, reminding us of our long-term objectives and dreams. The activity in this region determines our ability to act and resist diversions. In essence, the prefrontal cortex stands as a beacon of our willpower. Recognizing its nuances offers us a clearer path to channel our inner strength more effectively. So far, the author describes willpower as being segmented into three components: the desire to act, I want to do; the restraint from action, I won't do; and the longing or aspiration, I aspire to. This division represents the human brain's self-control mechanism. In contrast, there is another system called the impulse system, which, as the name suggests, drives us towards immediate actions and gratifications like getting angry quickly or indulging in delicious food. Many animals operate predominantly on this impulse system, acting primarily on instinct. Humans, however, have evolved a more complex brain that accommodates both the impulse and self-control systems. Over hundreds of thousands of years, primates, our evolutionary ancestors, have doubled their brain sizes, primarily in the frontal lobe area. Humans have 30% of their cortex devoted to the frontal lobe, compared to 20% in chimpanzees and just 10% in monkeys. This growth allows humans to exhibit two distinct selves. One, controlled by the impulse system, believes in living in the moment, while the other, regulated by the self-control system, is more strategic and plans for the future. When our self-control system is in full gear, we feel empowered and capable of great feats. However, if the impulsive side gains an upper hand, we might give in to immediate pleasures. Whether it's the tripartite division in the frontal lobe or the tug-of-war between the impulse and self-control systems, both indicate the brain's basis for willpower. But willpower isn't just about the brain. It's tied to the body as well. To illustrate this, imagine being thrown into a den of tigers. Your brain immediately sounds the alarm, with physical responses like rapid breathing and increased heart rate, preparing for fight or flight. Simultaneously, certain complex chemical reactions in the brain temporarily inhibit the frontal lobe to prevent hesitation, which might prove fatal. Now, picture escaping from the tigers, only to enter a room filled with tempting foods. Despite prior resolutions to maintain a healthy diet, there's a clash between the two systems within us, one urging us to indulge and the other to refrain. This internal conflict triggers another brain alarm, but this time the perceived threat is internal, the immediate desire pitted against long-term objectives. However, our evolved frontal lobe doesn't fail us. Our self-control system evaluates the situation, and we might take deep breaths to calm our impulses and restore peace. By doing so, we successfully resist the temptation, and our willpower triumphs. In essence, our brain pushes the accelerator, while our body taps the brakes, embodying the principle of think before you act. Now you will realize willpower is intricately tied to our bodies, especially our heart rate. Scientists use heart rate variability, HRV, as a measure of willpower strength. In summary, a higher HRV indicates stronger willpower, while a lower HRV suggests weaker willpower. HRV is the difference between consecutive heartbeats, gauging the variation over time. Regardless of the level of willpower, in stimulating situations, everyone's heart rate increases. However, individuals with higher willpower can quickly return their heart rate to a normal range, while those with weaker willpower might maintain an elevated rate. Thus, a higher HRV, which reflects a more variable and adaptable heart rate, can be an asset when we need to quickly adjust our emotional state. In summary, so far, the essence of willpower lies in the three areas of the brain's frontal lobe and represents a contest between our self-control and impulse systems. HRV serves as a physiological indicator reflecting this internal struggle. summarizing the dynamics as a three-part dominance, a duel of desires, and a single indicator. Understanding what willpower is, it's also vital to recognize the factors that deplete it. Often, it's said that our body is our physical foundation. The same applies to willpower. If our brain or body is exhausted or injured, our willpower is inevitably weakened. In simple terms, willpower has physiological limits. The more we push, the less we have left. Neuroscientists found that each time we exert willpower, the activity in our brain's self-control system diminishes. Psychologist Baumeister was the pioneer in systematically observing and measuring these willpower limits. Through various experiments, he noted that whether resisting cookies or controlling anger, one's willpower degrades over time. This could explain why, after a hectic day, people might indulge more in the evening. Those who require immense self-control in one area might be more reckless in others. Conversely, those who strive for perfect control across all areas are more prone to losing control. However, simply explaining lapses in self-control from a physiological perspective isn't comprehensive. Two people with similar health conditions and intact frontal lobes can have vastly different levels of willpower. So, other factors must be considered to fully understand these lapses. Let's delve into a scenario and understand the author's analysis. Taking the earlier example where one escapes from a tiger, let's name this individual Mike. After escaping from the tiger's den, Mike finds himself in a room filled with food. Laid before him are various delicious high-calorie cakes and also carrots. His eyes fixate on the cakes. Thinking about his incredible escape from danger, Mike believes he deserves a treat, so he joyfully consumes the first cake. With the second cake, he ponders life's unpredictability and shortness, convincing himself to indulge while he can. After the second cake, regret and guilt kick in. He thinks, since the damage is done, why not indulge a bit more and start afresh tomorrow? This rationale sees him through the third cake. As Mike contemplates having yet another slice, a group of people enters the room, all indulging in cakes. Before he realizes it, he's eaten the fourth piece. Now, Mike is transformed, no longer the same person. Though his frontal lobe, associated with self-control, is intact, he loses control. Why? The author analyzes Mike's first lapse of control, thinking back to his brave escape and believing he deserves a reward. This mindset is dubbed moral licensing. What does this mean? When people do something good, they tend to give themselves permission to indulge in not-so-good behaviors. It sounds odd, doesn't it? An experiment by two psychologists from Princeton University may surprise you. In the experiment, two groups of students, A and B, were asked to comment on different statements. Group A's statement was, "Most women are foolish," a clear gender prejudice. Group B's statement was milder, "Some women are foolish." As expected, Group A was outraged, while Group B was relatively neutral. The students were then asked to simulate a hiring process and judge male and female candidates for a high-level position, typically held by males. One would expect Group A, having just confronted a blatant gender bias statement, to be fairer in their judgment. However, the results showed the opposite. Compared to Group B, Group A demonstrated significant gender bias, favoring male candidates. Surprising, isn't it? The author notes that people on a moral high ground often feel good about themselves. This self-righteous feeling acts as a permit, as if saying, "You're so good, you can't be wrong," or "You've done so well, relaxing a bit, won't matter." This is the trap of moral licensing. What's more frightening is not just actual good deeds that make us complacent. Imagining or assuming we've done something good or even will do something good in the future can also lead us into the pitfall of moral licensing. Do you remember Mike from earlier? He said he wouldn't eat cake tomorrow. It's precisely because he thought he would be better tomorrow. So it's okay to be out of control today. In fact, all the positive labels that make us feel good can easily lead to a lack of self-control. For example, Saving money is good, so we shop excessively every single day. Environmental conservation is good, so we donate a tree in an app while in reality, the grass gets trampled into a path. Feeling good about oneself can easily lead to losing control. But what about feeling bad? The answer is that it can lead to loss of control as well. Mike felt bad twice. The first time, when he thought about the unpredictability of life and felt fear and nihilism, he ate a piece of cake to soothe his anxiety. The second time, he felt guilty for his lack of control and thought, "It's already ruined, so might as well have another piece." Let's break this down. Firstly, eating a cake to soothe anxiety is termed fear management in psychology. What does this mean? Whenever we think about our mortality, our brains experience fear, pushing us to find anything that makes us feel safe and empowered. The book mentions a survey where news about deaths made viewers more inclined to buy a Rolex watch. Though a Rolex can't stop bullets, such luxury items do give a feeling of empowerment. Next, why did Mike eat another piece of cake out of guilt? The author suggests it's related to the brain's protective mechanism. The brain not only wants to keep our body safe, but also wants us to be in a good mood. When we feel down, the brain acts like comforting a crying child, saying, "Don't cry. Here's a candy." For instance, psychologists made people on diets imagine they gained 10 pounds, thus inducing negative emotions. Afterward, instead of eating less, they consumed even more to comfort themselves. On the surface, it seems that feeling bad leads to a lack of control, but in reality, the brain is just working overtime to ensure our emotional well-being. Finally, when a group of people entered Mike's room and ate cake, he couldn't resist and had another slice. What's the reason behind this? The author introduces the concept of mirror neurons, which are a type of neuron in our brain that reflects and mimics the actions and emotions of others. For instance, seeing someone yawn makes us yawn due to the function of these neurons. Thus, it's easy to understand why Mike couldn't resist eating after seeing everyone else doing so. Scientists found that if a person's friend gains weight, their probability of gaining weight also significantly increases, all because of this principle. In this section, we analyze the reasons for the lack of self-control from 4 perspectives: physiological basis, feeling good about oneself, feeling bad, and group influence. Regarding willpower, it seems like we can't be too happy or too sad about it. It's as if any situation could lead to a lapse in control. But can willpower actually be improved? The answer is yes, it can. Let's take a look at how to improve willpower. The first method to enhance willpower is to strengthen the body. Why? It's simple because willpower is linked to the frontal lobe of the brain and the heart rate. Hence, any activity beneficial for their recovery and enhancement can boost willpower. The author introduces 4 methods: sleep, meditation, exercise, and breathing training. Both sleep and meditation target the frontal lobe. Sleep allows the frontal lobe to rest, thus restoring willpower. Meanwhile, meditation exercises the frontal lobe, similar to lifting weights. When lifting weight, it increases blood flow to the muscles, strengthening them. Meditation similarly increases blood flow to the frontal lobe, enhancing it. In fact, research has found that just a short meditation practice every day significantly improves one's willpower. Next, exercise and breathing training work by increasing heart rate variability to boost willpower. The author introduced a simple breathing exercise, specifically reducing the breathing rate to 4 to 6 times per minute, meaning each breath lasts 10 to 15 seconds. Does this method work? A study discovered that adults who practice this breathing training for 20 minutes daily can improve their heart rate variability and reduce impulsiveness. We previously touched upon the idea that feeling morally justified can reduce our willpower. How do we combat this? By avoiding assigning moral labels to our actions. It's not about labeling actions as good or bad, but rather, it's about meeting our own expectations. While this idea might sound complex at first, there's profound insight behind it. Recall the metaphor of the two tigers symbolizing willpower. One represents impulsiveness and the other self-control. If we toast to control our impulses, aren't we admitting that our impulsive self is the real us? For instance, if I put in a lot of effort into a run and reward myself with a chicken leg afterward, doesn't that imply deep down, I believe the real me doesn't want to run? This shows that if we see our true selves as impulsive, we can fall into the trap of moral licensing. However, we're not just our impulsive selves, but also our self-controlled selves. Going for a run represents my self-controlled self. In other words, running is my responsibility. By viewing matters from this angle, we activate the self-control self, not acknowledging a good deed, but acknowledging our true self, thus avoiding the trap of moral licensing. This is the second method to boost willpower: demoralize to activate the self-control self. But if in the end, the impulsive self takes over, leading us to regrettable actions that spiral out of control, what should we do? The author suggests the most effective method is to forgive oneself. Is this reliable? Let's look at a psychological experiment. Researchers invited young women concerned about their weight to participate. Under the guise of research, they were encouraged to eat candies in 4 minutes and drink a large glass of water to induce guilt. Following this, half of the participants received messages emphasizing self-forgiveness, while the other half received no such messages. Later, they were asked to taste various candies and rank them based on taste, with the freedom to eat as much as they wanted. The results showed those who received self-forgiveness messages ate only 28 grams of candy, whereas the other group consumed almost 70 grams. This demonstrates the power of self-forgiveness. This is the third method to enhance willpower: awakening the self-controlled self through introspection and accepting the impulsive self through self-forgiveness. Can this complete self resist temptations? Not necessarily. For instance, I understand the logic, but I just can't resist the urge. Don't worry, there's a fourth tool to prevent losing control called impulse control. Let's look at a rather brutal experiment. Researchers from the Addiction Behavior Research Center at the University of Washington invited 12 heavy smokers who hadn't smoked for 12 hours. When these people walked into the lab, they found 12 boxes of their favorite cigarettes on the table. The researchers instructed them to strictly follow certain steps. Pick up the cigarette pack and stare at it for 2 minutes. Take out a cigarette and look at it for another 2 minutes. Put the cigarette in their mouth and pause for 2 minutes, and so on. This torment lasted for an hour and a half. It was a truly nerve-wracking experiment. After the experiment, they were asked to record how many cigarettes they smoked daily and their mood over the next week. A week later, 6 of them smoked as usual, but the other 6 reduced their smoking urges by 37%. So, what did these 6 individuals go through? It turns out they had undergone impulse control training before the experiment, which improved their willpower. The training was like this: when an urge arises, don't control it mentally. Spend at least a minute feeling and observing it, noticing any physical or emotional changes. Then don't act on the impulse, but act according to your goals. The methods we've discussed so far, including physical strengthening, moral neutralization, self-forgiveness, and impulse control, all aim to boost willpower from a personal perspective. However, humans are social animals, and mirror neurons in our brains aren't just for show. For instance, when someone yawns, we often can't help but yawn too. So, the fifth method to enhance willpower is to build friendships. Ideally, friends who live healthily keep our egos in check and prevent feelings of shame or guilt. If you can't find such friends for some reason, then take them as role models and get close to them. There's an old saying, "Those near vermilion get stained red, and those near ink get stained black." In simpler terms, the power of role models is immense. To summarize the book's main points, first, we discussed what willpower is. It's not just an attitude, but a physiological activity based on the prefrontal cortex and the body. It's akin to 3 parts of the world with 2 tigers in combat and 1 metric. The 3 parts refer to the 3 areas of the prefrontal cortex responsible for I want to, I don't want to, and I desire. The 2 tigers depict the struggle between the self-control and impulse systems. The physiological metric is heart rate variability, which indicates our self-control strength. Secondly, we identified 4 main factors that weaken willpower: physiological foundation, feeling too good about oneself, feeling too bad about oneself, and group influences. Thirdly, we discussed 5 ways to enhance willpower: physical strengthening, moral neutralization, self-forgiveness, impulse control, and forging friendships, particularly with strong-willed role models. In conclusion, it's often said that the biggest difference between people isn't intelligence but willpower. After all, the saying goes, perseverance leads to victory, not intelligence leads to victory. The author even claims that strong willpower is a person's most prominent strength. It contributes more to high grades than IQ, more to leadership than charisma, and more to marital happiness than empathy. But even with strong willpower, one must first ensure they're on the right path. And where's this right path? It lies within us. We often talk about being curious about the world, but forget to be curious about ourselves. Understanding, caring for, and reminding ourselves of what truly matters are the cornerstones of self-control. That concludes this audio's content. Congratulations on completing another book. Please subscribe to the channel, like, and share with your family and friends. Thank you, and goodbye.